CMTS.
So I have 7 p.m. Let's call the meeting to order, please. We're very fortunate and appreciative that we have the Reverend Ross Halbersema from the New Hope Alliance Church to deliver our invocation this evening. Thank you very much, sir.
Will you please stand? Let us pray. Lord God, creator of the universe, you have gifted us with a beautiful, beautiful day today. I trust we have stewarded it well. Tonight, we commit this agenda and these leaders to you. With budget issues, there are probably more opinions than there are people in this room. And so give us ears that listen and a mind that seeks to understand information that we may not even know or be aware of. And so thank you for community in which we live, for those who are guardians of this community and caretakers of it. Thank you. You are awesome in all of your ways, and we acknowledge your goodness and your blessings to us. We are wealthy people. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Chairman Fisher, you lead us in the pledge, please.
Please remain standing and face the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Adoption of the agenda. Just for information's sake, I'll ask under committee appointments for the board to comment if there are any on a nomination that is before you, but that will come later. Any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
How would the board like to handle the agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
To adopt as presented.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Adoption of the agenda. Consent agenda. Tentative agenda items for consent are tabs A, B, C, and H. Are there any proposed changes?
No, sir.
How would the board like to handle it?
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We'll adopt the consent agenda as presented. That will bring us to the next page. Committee appointments.
You skipped citizen comments.
Comments, I'm sorry. Too much yellow. This is a portion of the agenda that we set aside for citizen comment on agenda items only that are not subject to public hearing. Does anyone have anything at all they'd like to share with the board?
We have a sign-up list with a couple of
Okay.
people. Jay
ahead.
Martz wants to address the issue of citizen comments on CIP.
Hey, good evening, Chairman DeHaven, members of the board and staff. I'm Jay March, a resident of the Gainesboro District. I wasn't certain when you were going to take up the school board SIP proposal for the new construction, but I do hope you had a chance to read this morning's Winchester Star and the commentary from the open forum entitled Moderate Your Project, a Word of Caution to the Frederick County School Board. It was written by our neighbor over in Clark County, Robina Buffont. Her comments have echoed many of the same sentiments you have heard here before. Population growth has been slow. Student growth has been flat for many years. I provided you with some data on elementary schools, that here that show the numbers reported by the school board, that we actually have upwards to 873 open desks in our 11 facilities, and that adjusting school boundaries could technically save us $40 million. And then on the subject of the proposed high school, if you accept the school board data that our current capacity at our high schools with the use of modular classrooms is currently standing at 4,400. This brings our capacity up to 1,725. With the new high school at 1,725 would equal a combined capacity of 6,125 student chairs. Based upon their growth projections, it would take us 53 years to reach this new capacity in the year 2070. And I hope you looked at the closing comments in today's open forum. I think they were very instructive. I quote, "And don't forget, Buildings don't teach children. Good teachers do. I've also offered another citizen petition asking for alternatives to the school board's only proposal of expensive new construction and enormous debt, as I have since 2015. Thank you for allowing me to address the board.
Thank you, sir.
Joe Crane.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to give you a sensing of what I'm hearing in Gainsborough District. I'm Joe Crane from Gainsborough District, and sensing of what I'm hearing from my neighbors, specifically in regards to this new school construction. We've not seen professional studies showing potential population growth and demographics for the next 5 to 20 years. We've not seen professional engineering studies concerning the additions to the current existing schools. We've not seen professional community plans showing how the readjustment of school boundaries could accommodate all students and thus alleviate overcrowding. And that's my concerns and a concern to my neighbors concerning the new school. We feel like $84 million plus could be better spent. And if I had my druthers, a lot of that money would go to the sheriff's department. As former Leo, these gentlemen driving in vehicles that should have been life cycled 5 or 6 years ago, we should be ashamed of ourselves. So that's what I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And the last one is Dana Newcomb.
Dana Newcomb, I'm from Gainsborough District. The chairman of the school board has asked for a response from the Board of Supervisors with regard to their new construction budget request. The school board's new construction budget request rests upon a foundation of lies, fabrication, and deception perpetrated by the leadership of the school board and the school administration for the consumption of the ignorant and the uninformed among us. For the past year, we've laid the facts before you that prove the lie. The school establishment know that the basis for the school construction proposal is a lie. Every one of you behind that dais know it's a lie. And if they don't know already, by November, every voter in this county will know it's a lie. So we strongly recommend that the Board of Supervisors unanimously reject the school board's irresponsibly extravagant and fiscally unsupportable request, and that you solicit from them a responsible, documented, cost-effective program providing for the expansion, renovation, and maintenance of public properties entrusted to them by the taxpayers of this county, and for which they and you have fiduciary responsibility and pecuniary liability. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's it? Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Any item not subject to public hearing, sir?
CIP.
Concerning the budget or concerning in general?
CIP.
Now's as good a time as any, sir. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ned Fahrenholt, a resident of Stonewall District, grandparent of Frederick County middle and high school students. I'm here again to beg you to protect us from the absurd capital budget requests by the school board. It's now beyond the question of whether we should have an $80 or $90 million for the fourth high school. We don't need any new high school, nor do we need to expand Armel or build additional elementary schools. University of Virginia official forecasters are predicting flat to declining student enrollment for our county. We have a perfectly good empty school on Linden Drive. We apparently have so many empty seats in our existing elementary schools that they're offering free preschool daycare to compete with our commercial tax-paying daycare centers. The more we learn, the more absurd this gets. Lamanna and his bureaucrats are trying to hustle you into a put-up or shut-up situation, and do not believe you have the fortitude to just say no. With their Common Core program, they profess critical thinking. We need to do a little critical thinking ourselves and reject their foolish capital plan. Additional schools will not only increase our already heavy debt burden, but will add many millions annually to the operating costs for new administrative and support personnel. Lamanna is being overly pushy now because he knows that student enrollments are going down, and with each year it'll become more obvious. If they do not intimidate you into approving this now, they may never get their Taj Mahal schools. We want better education, not higher taxes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I wasn't sure there were two different times to speak, but I do believe what I want to say comes under this category. My name is Karen Vance. I'm from Shawnee District. I moved here 2 years ago. The first thing I did was find out where I was to vote. I actually didn't take that much interest in districts and local government, but I'm here this evening because I've heard and read and looked into these grandiose school building plans, and it really, in a way, has reawakened the activist in me, and I think in a lot of other people. You will hear some speak on questionable information and figures that's presented by the Frederick County School Board, and I also have studied some of these figures and find them questionable. Tonight, I want to speak on something that isn't a fact, but it very well, I believe, will become possibly a fact, and that's school choice. We are facing this, and I don't believe that the Frederick School Board has taken this into consideration whatsoever. So when you look at some of their figures as has been presented, that this huge enlargement is not needed, and then you factor in if school choice passes, I can tell you now that there are wonderful parochial and private schools around here. And if it passes, many people are going to take advantage of putting their children into those schools. And that is going to lower the enrollment even more so. So I think this whole project is just kind of an analogy of what we've been faced with in government in the last few years. We've been subjected with inflated numbers and lack of clear, concrete information. The citizens here in Frederick County are joining the wider national movement that we want to understand, we want our representatives to hear us, and we really just feel like enough already. You, the Frederick County Supervisors, have it in your power to look into this school, all the different facts and things that they have presented. I've worked in school systems. I believe in good teachers. I believe in academic improvements. I am not talking about any of that. I am talking about this building plan and this enlargement. So what I'd like to say is that here with you all, the buck begins because you're the guardians of our tax dollars. And I'd like to see you tell the school board that they need to revisit and de-escalate their plans. Then here is where the overabundance of schools needs to stop if they do not do that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. My name is Stephen Baker. I'm a resident of Redbud District. My wife and I have lived in the Redbud District for going on 21 years. And I have two children who graduated from Millbrook High School, one in '06 and one in '09. So no dog in the fight as far as kids in the school anymore. But I go back to when Millbrook was being built. That's saying about deja vu all over again. Back then, I heard the same arguments. You know, we have people who don't want to raise taxes, increase spending. I mean, they're going to find any excuse. It's just not going to happen. Now, one thing I remember back then, and what I look at, and I'm one of the old folks that still read the paper daily, okay? Smaller demographic, and you've got a lot of them here. A lot of the people that are interested in these schools are out working. You know, they're commuting down to D.C. or wherever, and they're paying taxes, and they have kids in school, and they can't be here. And I thought, you know, somebody needs to take up for them. But the argument back then sounds just like it is now. I happen to know the figures you were given back then, and there's a good check and balance. You know, school board has to come to you folks, and the look of the Board of Supervisors has not changed a whole lot in these 20 years. You're a check and balance on the figures they give you. They know that. They were giving you good figures back then. I'm sure they're giving you good figures now. There was a good article in the paper about the cost being reasonable. Our county, we have a 3% or thereabouts unemployment rate. We've gotten out of the Great Recession, but there's always some reason that we can't do something, okay? Let's take care of our kids. Let's take care of the growth we're going to have. We are blessed by demographics. I'm from West Virginia, and I often say, you know, we're a victim of our geography over there, and that causes a lot of problem for the economy. Here, we've got 66 and 81 running right down through here, and that has brought a lot to this area. We need to keep going forward. They're giving you reasonable expenses. I'm in favor of you going forward. I have no problem with our property tax going up, and I hope you will support our kids and the school system by going forward with the projects that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
Sean Graber, Back Creek District. I hadn't planned on speaking on this evening, but after hearing some of the discussion, I felt a need to. You know, I've been listening the last 2 to 3 years, the school board speak about if the Board of Supervisors has any other options other than this $130 million roughly that they're asking for, that they wanted to hear them. Well, I'm honored to say that one of you stepped up to the plate and offered them a plan other than this $130 million to spend on these new schools. And the plan was to expand Millbrook, if I'm not mistaken, to make it meet the capacity for the next 10 years. In doing so, it would not only meet the capacity needs of today, but the needs of the next 10 years, allow us to pay off some of the interest that we currently owe, and at that point, maybe be able to pay cash for a school without raising taxes. I was told by the supervisor, and I'm not here to call people out, but I will congratulate that supervisor, Blaine Dunn, for offering a solution. The solution was offered. The school board didn't seem to like it. They didn't seem to care. They said it had to come from the whole board, not just one supervisor. Well, I heard it come from Mr. Lamont, Dr. Lamanna's mouth, that if the board had other plans or other objectives, he wanted to hear them. It was brought forth. When I was in 5th grade, I had a wonderful sheriff tell me one time, he said, you need to remember just 3 words. Just say no. It seems that everything that's been proposed from this board to the school board that has been different than their $130 million plan has just had the simple word no attached to it. You are similar to parents. You dish out an allowance. You've dished out a large allowance to the schools, as I will point out later in our budget. Please remember just 3 words. To the $130 million roughly proposed by the school board, just say no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? All right, thank you. We appreciate your comments. Now I believe we're ready to go to committee appointments. The Board of Supervisors comments, are there any?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
last year, at the same budget meeting, we heard a lot of comments, and they were good comments. And then a lot of people left. So because of the constraints that we had, if any of you would like to hear comments to your comments or discussion, stick around to the end. And after comments have been made, some of us may want to make some comments as well, so we can have a two-way conversation as opposed to just saying, here they are, and then just leaving. I understand that people have children to take care of and other items, but if you want to stay around to the end of this meeting, some of us might have comments to a various set of comments that we were likely to hear tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Fisher.
Just an FYI for everyone, the Board of Supervisors and the school board have continued to talk and work together in an attempt to find a way to address the needs and move the school system forward. And I just think everybody needs to know that. We're not sitting here doing nothing. We're continuing to talk, and we will continue to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? All right. So now we'll flip back to committee appointments. As quickly as it'll get there. So, Social Services Board, do we have anything?
Yes, sir, we do not yet.
Thank you, sir. Board of Building Appeals? Anyone? Thank you. Historic Resources Advisory Board is April.
We are not ready to move on that one yet, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Planning Commission?
I am pleased to let you know that Robbie Molden, who has been on there for a 4-year term, has agreed to serve another 4-year term. And I would like to move that the board accept that, his move to do so.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Mr. Robert S. Molden is reappointed to the Planning Commission for Opequon. Mr. Ambrogi for Shawnee.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for reappointment of Mr. Ambrosi to the Planning Commission.
So I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Mr. Lawrence R. Ambrogi is reappointed to the Planning Commission. Sanitation Authority, Mr. Tom Simon. I understand that he is willing to continue to serve. How would the board like to handle that one?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Mr. Tom Simon is reappointed to Frederick County Representative to the Sanitation Authority. I believe that brings us to the end of the committee appointments and takes us to request to the Commissioner of Revenue for refunds. Ms. Garden.
Were you going to mention your appointment issue at this time?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'll be happy to do that. Before you is the chairman's recommendation for an appointment to the Finance Committee. And if there are any concerns or comments concerning that, I'd like to hear them. Otherwise, I will appoint Mr. Jeffrey Abope to the Finance Committee as a citizen member. Any comments? Thank you, then. We'll move forward.
The first item, the first refund request you have is to authorize the treasurer to refund Chaos Fab Shop LLC the amount of $3,143.53 for business license fees for 2016, resulting from reclassification of business license taxes for the 2016 tax year. So you would need to approve the refund and also the supplemental appropriation in that amount.
How would the board like to handle this one?
I make a motion for approval in the amount of $3,143.53 and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
A motion to approve both. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
The second one is a request to refund $3,683.49 for proration of personal property taxes for 2016 in the name of Penske Truck Leasing Company. The refund is a result of proration of personal property taxes on vehicles sold, traded, or moved out of Frederick County. And again, we would be requesting a refund and the supplemental appropriation.
Thank you, ma'am. How would the board like to handle this one?
Make a motion for the approval of the request for $3,683.49 to Penske Truck Leasing Company and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
Motion to approve both. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. I believe that brings us to the end of the commissioners' list.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Finance Committee under tab F.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on March 15th, 2017. Items numbers 7 and 8 were approved under consent agenda, and I would make the motion that we approve those accordingly.
There's a motion to approve 7 and 8 under consent. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
The second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
That takes us to item number 2. The Park and Stewardship Planner requests a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $17,500. This amount represents an increase in VDOT funding for the VDOT Recreation Access Grant awarded in December 2016. No additional local funds are required. The funding increase also requires an updated board resolution to accept the new amount. The committee recommended approval of the supplemental appropriation and the updated resolution, and I would so move.
Motion to approve both. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 3, the Parks and Recreation Director requests approval of a revision to their donation and recognition policy, allowing rights to be sold for existing unnamed facilities. The revision has been approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission. The committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 4, the Social Services Director requests approval to become fiscal agent for Clark Frederick Winchester Foster Care Program and a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $12,838 to cover the month of June. No additional local funds are required. The committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Takes us to item number 5. Stevens City Fire and Rescue request a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $224,105.51. This amount is a request for proffer funds for a proposed ancillary building project. Subsequent to our meeting, I received a call from Supervisor Fisher, which I would like to turn this request over to him at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'd like to make a motion to postpone any action by the board on this and refer it to the Safety Committee for their review, and then bring it back to the board.
Public Safety Committee.
Public Safety,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation and the motion. Is there a second? And a second, is there a discussion? Anyone?
Just,
Yes, sir?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good proposal. I'll be glad to, defer to Mr. Fisher on letting the Public Safety Committee review it as well. But Stevens City has done a good job in trying to live within a budget. These are proper funds that are used for this, so I think that the project itself is a good project.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
And the last agenda item, the Fire and Rescue Chief requests a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $10,266. This amount represents revenue collected in excess of budgeted for fire school programs. No local funds required. The committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
Heard the recommendation motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
The second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Ewing?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Brings us to the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget presentation. Ms. Garten.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and also members of the public. Again, I apologize that I have to talk with my back to you. I'll be presenting the proposed fiscal year 17-18 budget, and try to keep up with my slides over to the right. When the budget process begins in Frederick County, the chair of the board's finance committee gives the county administrator a letter and outlines the priorities that the board has for the upcoming budget. The first couple of slides give you a summary of those priorities that were given to me in the fall. This is a reassessment year, so clearly that would have an impact on our revenues for fiscal year 17-18. The Finance Committee Chair also asked that we consider public safety and education needs as priorities. We were to identify and prioritize capital needs in the county, provide responsible stewardship of funds, continue to minimize the size of government wherever possible, and maintain fund balance and establish debt policies that provide financial stability. In addition to those priorities, I also begin each year's budget process with an analysis in my own head of things that I know of that are priorities and that I need to look at. I'm not going to read all of these in the effort of not making this presentation too long, but I'll highlight a few things. It's always my objective to try to make sure that we provide sufficient funding for employee compensation to maintain the quality of our staff and to maintain the quality of the service that we provide to the citizens. And that would apply to both the county side of the house and the school side of the house. We have historically split new revenues between the county and the schools based on a percentage. The board has discussed looking at that percentage in the future, but this year we stuck with the same pattern that we've been using. The fund balance is similar to the board's directive to me. I also include in the budget a contingency fund so that we have a little bit of money in reserve for emergencies that come up that have not been anticipated. I look really hard at requests for new staffing. It's almost always the case that we get requests for more new staff than we can possibly fund, and so I have to look at those requests really carefully to figure out what needs are the most critical in maintaining the level of service in the county. And then we're hoping to be able to continue the reduction in the use of fund balance for operating costs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I usually try to recommend the use of fund balance only for one-time capital items and not for operating expenses, and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we carefully look at any kind of funding request for a new initiative, something that we don't currently do. Can we actually afford to start something new? Public safety is a big part of our budget and is always a place of need. And I'm always interested in requests for technology that can either improve service delivery or provide for efficiencies in terms of our staff's workload. So one of the first things we do when we're working on the budget is we look at what do our revenues look like. There's a fair amount of work that goes into revenue projections. We look at patterns and we try to the best of our ability, absent a crystal ball, to project what our revenues will be next year. So for the upcoming fiscal year, we have projected an increase, a natural increase in local taxes of about $5 million. So those increases would be resulting from the fact that we have new tax revenues that we didn't have last year. For example, we might have new houses or new businesses or new revenue streams that were not present last year. That's just kind of a natural increase. In addition to that, we have other revenues that come into the general fund that are specific to specific programs and cannot be used in other places, like a grant that's specific to a specific program, or revenues that pertain to a constitutional office. So those funds cannot be shared with the schools. This budget includes a proposed real estate tax rate of 60 cents. You held a public hearing in February, at which time we had advertised that the equalized tax rate, based on the fact that the reassessment produced higher values for real property in the county, was 55.32 cents. You advertised a tax rate of 60 cents, and that's the tax rate that's used in this budget. That generates an additional $4.3 million. So that actually shows up as new revenue in this budget based on the increase of the tax rate to 60 cents from the equalized rate of 55.32 cents. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. So that generates a total amount of new revenue in the general fund of about $11.9 million. When you compare that increase in new revenue against the total expenditure request that we got of $23 million, even if we used all those revenues, and even if we funded every single thing that everyone asked for that we could afford, we'd still be short $11.3 million. So clearly, you know, the requests were not going to be fully funded. The initial request from the schools, including their operating, debt service, and capital, was for $183.2 million. When you subtract the revenues that they receive from federal, state, and other sources, a school transfer that they plan to use, a beginning balance, and last year's local transfer, then you get that the increase in the local transfer being requested was $8.7 million. So at this point, the board has already had a number of work sessions and had a significant amount of discussion about what to do with the revenue streams that you're projecting for next year, what to do with that $4.3 million. And this budget is actually a merging of the staff's work and the board's work in those budget work sessions, and reflects some of the decisions that I believe you all have made in terms of the budget that you would like to see for next year. And in that budget, the decisions that you have made to this point are that although we have a natural increase in taxes of $5 million, that you would reduce the amount of fund balance that we use in the operating budget by $1.1 million. If you remember, a couple of years ago, the county's budget included $7.2 million in fund balance toward operating expenses. Last year, we reduced that by $3.6 million, or half, to $3.6 million. So that's the budget that we're in now. And then for next year, you are further reducing that by $1.1 million. So next year's budget still uses $2.5 million in fund balance for operating costs, but we're weaning ourselves away from that over a period of time. So when you take away the $1.1 million from the natural increase in taxes, you get $3.9 million in new revenue that can be shared with the schools, and that 57-43% split produces the numbers you see on the screen. $2.2 million for an increase in the schools, and $1.7 million odd dollars on the county side. So what were the most critical needs that we had to look at in proposing this budget? Obviously, we have personnel needs in fire and rescue to provide adequate 24/7 coverage at stations with the highest call volume. It takes 6 fire and rescue EMT personnel to create a shift and add a second shift to a station, and we have several stations out of the 11 that have really, really high call volume. So this budget is attempting to address some of those needs. Another critical need was to make sure that our compensation systems on the county side of the house and the school side of the house is competitive within the market, so that we can attract and retain qualified employees. There are increases in cost over which the county and the school side have no control, such as VRS rates for staff. Those rates are determined by the state. There are personnel demands in other areas, inspections where the workload has increased, social services where the workload has also increased. Parks and Rec, the Treasurer's Office, the Sheriff's Office, and of course, instructional positions in our schools, and that's in addition to the fire and rescue that I just mentioned. Both sides of the House have significant and oftentimes delayed capital needs that we need to address. Funding is needed to keep infrastructure and buildings in good repair and for replacement programs for equipment and vehicles. So what's in the proposed budget that we advertised? Essentially, the budget proposes a real estate tax rate of 60 cents, which does, as I said a minute ago, represent a tax increase. The $4.3 million generated by that tax increase is proposed to be set aside for future capital needs. So in essence, you're saving it. You're setting aside and identifying it for capital projects in the future without naming at this point in time what capital projects they might be. New revenues are split with the schools in the same proportion as we've been using in the past, at 57-43. Capital needs are being addressed by appropriating $5.4 million from the fund balance, $3.1 million for schools, and $2.3 million for the county. And I mentioned a minute ago, we're reducing the use of fund balance for operating costs by $1.1 million. And most of the most critical personnel needs are being addressed. There are no other increases in taxes or proposed fee increases in the budget other than the real estate tax rate. This slide has a lot of numbers on it. It summarizes the non-school funds proposed for 2017, excuse me, for fiscal year 2018 in comparison to fiscal year 2017. The increase in the general fund is $16.2 million, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute because that's a big number. The school-related funds, similarly, this slide compares fiscal year 18 proposed funds and the various school-related funds to fiscal year 17 adopted budget. And then this slide gives you the comparison between fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 17, and then subtracts off the transfer because you kind of double count that money if you don't subtract it off. So for the fiscal year 2018 advertised budget, the total of all funds for fiscal year 18 is $314,838,215. The school-related budgets comprise 63% of that total, or approximately $199.6 million. Public safety comprises 18% of that figure, or $55.1 million, and everything else is 19%, or $60.2 million. This chart gives you a summary of revenues compared to fiscal year 18, and you can see the general property taxes increase of $8 million there. This pie chart summarizes the general fund revenue of $179 million between general property taxes at 65.23% and the various other sources. Obviously, general property taxes is our biggest source of revenue. So we talked about that there is a significant increase in the general fund in fiscal year 18 being proposed in comparison to 17. So what this slide is doing is saying we started off in 2017 with $163.3 million in our general fund budget. So what is the change between 17 and 18? There is a natural increase in local taxes of about $5 million that I mentioned. The increase in the real estate tax rate generates $4.3 million. There is a non-tax increase in revenues, and those are the funds that cannot be shared with the schools because they're specifically designated for certain purposes, of $2.5 million. Then we're reducing the use of fund balance by $1.1 million, and then we're using one-time fund balance monies to fund capital on the school side of the house and the county side of the house of $3.1 and $2.3 million respectively. So those numbers add up to a change of $16.2 million, resulting in the projected revenues for fiscal year 17-18 of $179.5 million. I would point out, though, that although that is a $16.2 million increase, $4.3 million, which is the new revenue from the real estate assessment, the reassessment, is being set aside for future capital projects. $5.4 million is a one-time use of fund balance for capital items, and $1 million is included in that $2.5 million is an estimated grant that we hope to get for a capital project. Those total $10.7 million. So although that looks like a big number, a lot of it is that set aside for capital and the one-time use of fund balance and grant monies that won't necessarily be the same next year or that are being saved. So when you start with that $179.5 million that was on the previous slide and subtract off the $4.3 million that you have tentatively agreed to set aside for future capital projects, and then you subtract off the amount that's being given to the schools, what's left in the general fund available on the county side of the house is $169.8 million. Comparing that against the request on the county side of the house, we reduced the request in this budget by $8 million in order to balance. So we had to go through the budget pretty much line by line and eliminate $8 million from funds that had been requested. This slide summarizes where the expenditures go in this budget. School transfers represent $96.3 million, or 54% of the general fund budget. And the other biggest area is public safety at 21%, or $38.1 million. And I doubt very seriously that the audience can read some of those tiny little numbers, and I apologize for that. But the two biggest chunks are the school transfers on the lower left, and public safety is the orange-looking wedge on the right. So how are those local revenues or those increases being spent? There is an increase in local funding for the schools of approximately $5.3 million, which includes both operating and debt service and capital. There is a 2% raise for county employees in the budget. The board has said that if the school board is able to provide 2.5% increase for their staff, that we will do the same. So we have sufficient money in there that we can move around if that is the case. The budget includes $3.5 million in capital funding for general fund, and that includes sheriff's vehicles and self-contained breathing apparatus for the fire and rescue staff and volunteers. That equipment is obviously to protect firefighters when they go into a burning building, and the equipment that we currently have is at end of life. So we have put a project in here for $3 million, which is comprised of $1 million in an anticipated grant and $2 million in fund balance to be able to provide that equipment for both the paid staff and the volunteers. And then there are other capital items in there in addition to that, small items. Of the personnel requests that we received in the general fund, this proposed budget funds 12 firefighter EMS positions with equipment. And remember, I said it takes six folks to create a shift at a station when you consider 24/7, 365 days a year operations. So this would allow us to give a second shift at 2 stations with the highest call volume. There's one new sheriff's deputy with equipment, one building inspector, 2 treasurer's office cashiers starting in mid-year, 1 social services administrator position, and 1 parks and rec technician, which is really increasing a part-time to a full-time. There are increases in funding for the health department, social services, the community services board, and those are jointly funded with the state. There are increases in library funding, which is a regional operation. There are upgrades to pictometry, which is a software program that helps with reassessment and also can be used by other departments. There is a CSA, Comprehensive, it used to be Comprehensive Services Act. It has a new name, which escapes me. It's the funding for children, programs for children in need. Microsoft Office 365, which is an upgrade to their software program that will actually save us money over time. We have increased costs in health insurance for employees, line of duty insurance, and retiree health insurance, and various and sundry increase and decreases throughout the budget, line by line, that are too numerous to go into. What's not funded in the general fund budget is 10 of the 11 requested patrol deputies and 1 investigator, which the sheriff had asked for, and 17 of 29 positions that were requested by fire and rescue. The school's request was cut by $3.4 million. There were a number of capital requests that we could not fund. There were various requests for increases in new initiatives throughout the general fund budget, one of those being to try to reinstitute the tuition assistance program to help staff who want to go back to school and increase their educational levels pertinent to their jobs. This chart shows you the proposed fiscal year 18 general fund budget in comparison to 6 or 7 years of history. And this just does that in a different way. This table summarizes the changes in the school budget in comparison to the fiscal year 16-17 budget. It shows the changes in revenue from local sources, state funds. The schools are anticipating a $3.6 million increase in state funds, a little bit of an increase in federal. They're going to transfer some money from debt into operating, and then the general fund increase that we talked about earlier of $2.2 million provides them a total increase in their operating fund of $6.7 million. This pie chart reflects school operating fund revenues, and it shows that we're about equal between what the local transfer is and what the state provides for our school system. 48% of their revenue is state, and 48% of their revenue is transfer locally from the general fund. And the rest of the impacts are pretty tiny. The student population for Frederick County Public Schools is expected to increase for fiscal year 18 by 286 students to a total of 13,803 students. The projected cost per student is $12,748. In comparison, the cost per student for fiscal year 16 was $11,409, and 15 was $11,009. And I've already talked about the increase in the local transfer being $2.2 million, and the increase to the school capital funds is $3.1 million. This slide shows a history of school operating fund budgets. And again, just shown to you in a different format. This graph shows the transfer to the school operating fund from our general fund. So that's the local transfer. You can see that it was relatively flat in those tough years in fiscal year 11, 12, and 13, which is pretty common throughout the state, I think. The state requires localities to fund their educational systems at certain levels, and I don't think there's a locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia that doesn't fund far and above beyond what a state requires. In our case, the proposed budget funds 116% above what the minimal requirement is from the state, and that varies from locality to locality. This graph, I think we've always included in the presentation. It shows you a comparison of our tax rate to surrounding localities. And this is the current year's tax rate. We tried to get the proposed, but we couldn't get enough data from the other localities to make that meaningful, so that slide's not in here. This is the current fiscal year's tax rate in comparison to others. This slide shows the median income in Frederick County, which is tiny again, $69,098 in comparison to other localities. And this slide shows the per capita expenditure comparison for Frederick County against other jurisdictions. It's from, it's not from the proposed budget, of course. So that summarizes the key elements in the proposed fiscal year 18 budget. I want to thank the board for working so hard in all your work sessions to deliberate the pros and cons of various options and come up with something that most of you felt comfortable with. I also want to thank the constitutional officers and the department heads for cooperating in the whole budget process, and also Superintendent Dave Savine and his folks for providing us everything that we asked them for in a timely fashion. My County Administrator's Budget Committee took on a whole bunch of extra meetings and worked with me for months, really, going through the detail of the budget. So I also want to thank Jay Tibbs, Chris Tierney, Cheryl Schiffler, Jennifer Place, and Becky Mariner for their help in the development of the budget. And I will sit down and take any questions you may have before you open the public hearing.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Garden? Anyone? All right. You'll bear with me. I need to share the rules of order that the board has long operated under. It's a public hearing. It's been called by the Board of Supervisors pursuant to the requirements of the Code of Virginia to receive comments on the proposed budget and tax levies for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. This budget's prepared for information and physical planning purposes only, so that the Board of Supervisors may have the benefit of your comments. It's our desire to have an orderly hearing. In an effort to achieve this, the following rules of order will prevail. All speakers must be recognized by the chairman. Each speaker should come to the podium and address their comments directly to the Board of Supervisors. State your name and magisterial district. Each speaker should be as brief as possible and limit his or her comments to no more than 3 minutes, please. No speakers will be allowed to speak more than once until all who wish to speak have had a chance to do so. Speakers are encouraged to be direct, to the point, and as brief as possible. It's the purpose of this hearing to receive your comments about the proposed budget. It's not the purpose of this hearing for the board to debate questions, engage in debate with speakers, or to make comments themselves. It's not intended to be a debate, or comments to the audience are not appropriate. Unruly or rude behavior will not be tolerated. The board reserves the right to limit the length of the hearing, especially if no new information is being presented. All the above is a please show each other the respect that you all deserve. And we will open the public hearing. We'll go down the list of those folks in the order in which they signed up. And we very much appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Who will be first?
And without asking you ahead of time, I would comment that although I'm positive we're going to hear different opinions, everyone was unified when we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which was really awesome. Michael Elwell.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board of Supervisors. My name is Mike Elwell. I'm the Director of Northwestern Community Services Board, and I want to thank you all for giving me an opportunity to talk to you this evening, and thank you all for the previous support you have given us over the years and anticipation of the support you give us for FY18. As you may know, Northwestern is a comprehensive behavioral health program serving 5 counties and the city of Winchester. We're slated to serve about 7,000 people in our catchment area this year. About 29% will probably come from Frederick County. We offer services for people, adults and children who have mental illness, adults and children who have substance use disorders, adults and children who have developmental and intellectual disabilities. So we're a comprehensive array of services. We have actual 4 facilities here in your county. We offer services ranging from psychiatric and nursing services, case management, 24 hours, 7 day a week, 365-day a year crisis services. We have programs that are assertive community treatment, that we have actually a treatment team that deals with severe and persistent mentally ill folks here in Frederick County and in the city of Winchester. It's a state-of-the-art kind of a program. We do prevention, early education services. We have a psychosocial day program here in the city of Winchester called Our Family. We also provide telephone triage and counseling services. So any given time of the day or night, anybody can call up and get us on the phone, and we will provide counseling services to them, which is connected to our crisis services. We leverage the money you give us to the tune of about $9 million in other government funding, which is a great bang for your buck. One great thing is that we have opened up 2 new programs in your county this past year, in the past 6 months. We opened up an intensive outpatient substance use program for adults on Amherst Street, and we opened that up in November, and we're reaching capacity already. So as you can surmise, that is a very needy program dealing with a needy clientele. We are addressing both the drug court clients in that program and the serious opiate epidemic that we have around the nation and in our region. In addition to that, we opened up a children's psychiatric program on Braddock Street. One of our goals was to have access to all of our children and families as close as possible to their home. Instead of going to Warren County to get your child services, you can now go here in Frederick County. So that is a great program. And we have 3 psychiatrists serving that program and a whole staff of therapists and case managers. So if you'd like an opportunity to go visit that, you should.
Please conclude, sir. We'll give you a second opportunity if you need it.
And I'm finished, but I wanted to thank you very much for your time and your
Appreciate you taking
contribution.
time out to be with us and sharing with us. Thank you, sir.
Lauren Cummings from the Northern Shenandoah Valley Substance Abuse Coalition.
Good evening, and it's appropriate that I would follow Mike Elwell from the Community Services Board. My name is Lauren Cummings. I am the Executive Director of the Northern Shenandoah Valley Substance Abuse Coalition. I want to just first start off by thanking you for your support of our efforts to address the addiction crisis in our area. I wanted to provide you with an update on the drug treatment court. We began the drug treatment court on August 16th of last year. To date, we have served 11 participants in the drug treatment court. We currently have 7 cases that came from Frederick County. We hired a new drug court coordinator, which you may have seen in the paper recently, and she is now taking over the duties of drug court coordinator while I focus on all of the other efforts that the coalition has going on. We hope to reach 20 participants by next year. The drug court is really a microcosm of the bigger problem and challenges that these participants are facing, and individuals who are struggling with addiction throughout our community. We have identified challenges to include housing, transportation, and food assistance. We currently have 7 out of our 11 clients who have been served who have had to live in a halfway house or an Oxford house. Thanks to the support of local Rotary clubs, we have been able to meet the needs of our clients. We have been able to offer them taxi vouchers to get to and from treatment and to and from court each week. We've also been able to provide rental assistance to them and food security. We're helping our clients to seek employment, and we are seeing lives being changed through this program. And I would invite you all at any time on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock to visit the drug treatment court. We meet in courtroom 3A in the courthouse just across the street. We want to also hire a part-time probation officer in the near future to be able to increase the number of individuals who are in the drug court. You know, we are continuing to identify gaps in treatment in our community and how to fill those gaps to better serve these clients. We're also trying to enhance education in the school systems about addiction, and we have a program coming up just next week within the school systems to be able to do that. We also plan to hold a community summit. As you may remember, we held a summit in November of 2014, and we want to hold another community summit to update all of our stakeholders on our efforts, the progress that has been made, and really where we're headed with our efforts. Again, I just want to thank you. You identified public safety as a priority in your budget, and this is a public health crisis that we're facing, and we hope that you will continue to support us in the amount that you have in the years past. As you know, that funding that we receive from you is contingent. Funding that we receive from other localities is contingent upon every locality giving that funding, and also it is our match for our Bureau of Justice Assistance grant. It's $350,000 over 3 years. The need is still there. This year we've had 13 deaths in our area. 2 of those deaths happened in Frederick County just in the past 3 months. And so I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Marietta Cather Walls, Lord Fairfax Soil and Water Conservation District.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and the board. Thank you for electing me as your representative for the Lord Fairfax Soil and Water District. And I'm happy to tell you, because all this depressing news about how much money we're spending, y'all sent us $7,000 last year for our county. And through the help of the Soil and Water District and our 6 employees that we share with 5 different areas, we brought back $220,000 to our area. And that's through conservation services that we do to protect our streams. Most of our drinking water comes from the Shenandoah River, and our neighbors and us are very concerned about our drinking water. So this year, it was requested to receive $11,000 to help us educate and have employees, those 6 employees between the 5 jurisdictions, to bring us more money in to help us protect our streams. And to me, clean water and preserving our soil in our area is very important. I grew up in this county, and I've been here for 53 years. And to me, preserving our land, preserving fresh water for everyone, pretty much what we do affects every single person in this room. So to me, having clean water, no bacteria in it, no chemicals, is very important to not only our land, but to our health. I'm a veterinarian, and I understand very clearly how it can affect people health, how it can affect our pet health in all the areas around us. So I do appreciate all your hard work. I know it seems like we spend a lot of money on people and all these other infrastructure things, but to me, make sure that we protect our water resources. And I personally am elected for a 3-year term, and each and every single person gets to elect who they think will protect their water the best. But through your help and, you know, small amount of money that we receive, I volunteer my time, Kitty volunteers her time, and the other directors on our board they are all volunteers. We do not get paid for our time. But thank you very much, and we are very concerned and want you to know that we will spend your money very wisely and bring back to our community a lot of money that's provided through state and federal funds. So please support us in every way you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kitty Hockman, also from Lord Fairfax Soil and Water Conservation District.
Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to be here, as always. I am Kitty Hockman Nicholas, owner-operator of Hedgebrook Farm, and elected director for the Lord Fairfax Soil and Water Conservation Board. Our mission statement is to assist the district in improving soil and water quality for the installation of soil and water conservation best management practices, to review applications for those funds, and to recommend approval of applications to the board. In addition, the Lord Fairfax Soil and Water Conservation Board has been in effect for 76 years, beginning with our very own Frederick County in 1941. We have come a long way, but in addition, we have gone backwards with our water and soil quality. Many factors have lessened the quality of our water, streams, and our soil. Moving forward, this board has established conservation activities. Frederick County Conservation Day, Arbor Day, Soil and Water Stewardship Week, local watershed meetings, and especially the Envirothon, which includes many Frederick County schools competing. And a new and exciting level, where does your water come from? We have received a grant to study, to ask, to look into where everybody's water is. Like Marietta reiterated, we all want to know where our water is coming from. I, too, grew up in Frederick County, and believe me, things have changed. We also have a weekly column in the Northern Virginia Daily and a monthly editorial in the Winchester Star. This is informing and educating our community as to what we accomplish and what needs to be accomplished. In closing, our staff spends many hours working with farmers and homeowners on farm projects, rainwater harvesting, green roofs, tree plantings, and on and on. As Dr. Seuss would have said, unless someone like you cares, a whole awful lot, nothing is ever going to get better if not. We request $11,250. Oh, that was close. Thank you so
Good
much.
timing. Thank you.
Karen Vance.
If you'd like, it's a different subject, but we'll move on if you don't. Thank you, ma'am.
George Hughes.
My name is George Hughes, live in Gainesboro District. I've been a resident here about 40 years. And I hate to say this, but in 40 years, I don't see a dang thing more that the county does for me than it did when I came here. And we're sure spending a whole lot more money. I don't see any more deputy sheriff cars go by the road. It takes longer for the fire department to get there now than it used to. The rescue squads take longer than it used to, and we spend a lot more money. I know that we get the perception that we only come here to complain. I come here because I'm very interested in what goes on in this county, and I hope to leave it a better place than when I came. Don't look like I'm making any progress. But when we talk to all the neighbors and talk to them, they say, it's no use going because it's a done deal. They're going to give people whatever they want. Nobody thinks about anything. And I'm not here to try to micromanage any one department, but I can guarantee you that in a county that only grew 1%, we don't need to add very many people. So I'm really thinking that there's a lot of slush in that budget. I think that if the school board can find room to spend $2 million and put 3 teachers on for a daycare project, they sure as hell don't need to build any new classrooms.
Thank you, sir.
Jay Martz.
Hey, good evening. I'm Chairman DeHaven, board member, staff. I'm Jay Martz, resident of the Gainesboro District. Hey, during your meeting in January, I discussed debt. Frederick County is in the red for $214 million. The Commonwealth is in debt for $91 billion, and the feds owe $20 trillion in debt. I also cited the fact that our county would collect an extra $4.3 million from your increase in the real estate reassessment. My prediction then was that you would spend every penny of it on expanding the bureaucracy, either in the operating or the capital budget, and that you would provide a pay increase to all the government employees, and that you would not reduce debt, and there would be no tax relief to your constituents by decreasing the tax rate even a penny, not even a penny. To make this large government, let alone to make this large government growth initiative revenue neutral. You certainly have not proven me wrong. And also, I offer yet another set of citizen petitions asking for fiscal responsibility regarding your continued drive towards expansion of government, higher taxes, increased debt at the expense of the citizen taxpayers. This budget is not conservative, nor is it compassionate. Thank you for allowing me to address the board.
Thank you, sir.
Richard Van Norton.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Richard Van Norton. I'm from Back Creek District. Mr. Lofton represents me. I've owned a farm in Star Tannery, Virginia for going on 20 years. I spent 25 years as a U.S. Marine before settling here in 1991. Currently, I serve as a state commander for American veterans. I'm also a life member of 4 other veteran service groups, and I stand before you tonight as a 67-year-old disabled veteran and resident of this county. But more importantly, I represent all veterans that reside in the county. Most of the veterans in our veterans organization are like me, old, retired, and on a fixed income. We can ill afford another tax increase, particularly one that's 8 times higher than our cost of living increase on Social Security and military retirement. And that is the effect that the increase in property value assessment is going to have even without an increase in the tax rate. I note the comment on the budget that says our taxes and fees imposed will remain unchanged. I understand budgets. I spent 15 years as a senior enlisted advisor in units from 1,500 to 15,000 Marines and sailors. I task organized the Marine Corps Reserve to go to the first Persian Gulf. I was a district executive of the local Boy Scout Council following my service as a Marine. Following that, I worked in 2 local banks, managing the collections in one and the consumer lending in the other. Infrastructure size and expense is by a large measure determined by population density. In recent years, you, our supervisors, and the Planning Commission have let development outpace the growth in revenue. If you go out Cedar Creek Grade and look at what used to be orchards, they are turning into neighborhoods and lots. The result is now we're placing a burden on the county taxpayer. You're entertaining a proposal for millions of dollars for a new high school that frankly is not needed. Look at the location of the high schools. They're on one side of the district. A child catching the bus in Star Tannery can expect to spend about 2 hours or more on a school bus. Every time you rezone an area from agricultural to residential, you increase the need for more roads, water lines, sewer, waste disposal, signs, repairs, first responders, and I could go on forever. If you own a single-family dwelling and 2 vehicles, you're probably paying around $1,500 a year in personal property tax. If you have 2 children going to a public school, you cost the county around $28,000 just in tuition and expenses related solely to education. One last point. 100% disabled veterans gets a waiver on their county vehicle license. No break for personal property tax. No break for Virginia state taxes, except for Virginia disability or VA disability income. I think we can do better. I hope you can do better. And I hope you think that you can do better. The question is, will you do something for the seniors and our veterans? I thank you for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Sean Graber.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I have a couple things here. I looked back over the budgets for the last 4 years and the proposed budget for this year, and I see a trend. I see increased taxes, I see rating of the rainy day fund, and I see an increase in debt. I look at fiscal year 2016, which just ended, and I see that we had a 1% growth in population, yet our budget increased 8.73%. Now, any math, whether it's the new math, as I was referred to a couple years ago, or the old math that I had 25 years ago, can see that our budget increase in regards to our population increase was 873%. If you look at the year before, it was 488%. And if you look at fiscal year 17 that will end in June, we're at 577%. We are clearly spending a lot more in regards to what our budget is increasing significantly higher than our population increase. We cannot continue to do that long term and stay solvent. I hear frequently that it is about the children, and I agree. If we continue to laden our children with a massive amount of debt, they will never be able to pay it. I have a neighbor, I spoke with you about him about 2 months ago, who has 2 children. His wife is disabled. He works 5 12-hour shifts every week, sometimes 6, to keep bread on the table. There was a lien placed against him for taxes within the last 2 years. The man is working his heart out. He can't afford the tax increase that he received this year. I received in excess of a 20% tax increase over the last 16 months between the 2-cent tax increase and then the reassessment, even though no improvements have been done to my property. Our teachers, while they do need to be paid well, are the highest paid in the valley. I went to the Virginia Department of Education website and found that they are higher than Augusta, Clark, Page, Rockingham, Shenandoah, and Warren counties. Our closest is Clark, where they are within 3% of what our Frederick County teachers make. Next is Shenandoah, who make 8.1% less than what our teachers make. Rockingham is next with 8.5%. They're 8.5% less than what our teachers make, which is close in population. Warren teachers make 12% less, and Page teachers make 17% less. Additionally, our teachers have seen, and this is an average according to the Virginia Department of Education, an average pay increase of 7.09% increase in pay over the last 2 years. My salary hasn't went up that much. I don't know how many in the audiences has. Additionally, our schools have seen an increase in funds, and for this year alone is a 4.2% increase in funds with an only population increase of 3.93%. If you go back through the last 5 years, you will see that the school's funds have increased significantly higher than the population has increased. If you look at the cost to educate a student of $12,748 per student as is proposed, go to many of our private schools, you will see that they are being educated for nearly half of that amount. Thank you for your time. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, sir.
Ned Fahrenholt.
Thank you. I'm Ned Fahrenholt, Stonewall District. The only point I'd like to point out here is that I can understand population increase causing more expenses to the county, the services you provide. I can understand inflation causing costs to go up. Inflation has been running less than 2%, and our population has been going at about 1.2%. Put those two together, and you're about half of the 5%, a little over half of the 5% that you all have been raising the budget every year. I don't understand that. The bureaucracies will keep on asking and asking and asking. They have an insatiable appetite. But you all cannot go on and just keep going up and up and up. Please, please don't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jay Kirk. I'm sorry, Joy.
It's okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Joy Kirk, and I am a resident of the Back Creek District and the president of the Frederick County Education Association. I am appreciative of the opportunities I have had to address you during this budget process. As president of over 650 members, I get phone calls and emails throughout the year with questions and concerns. This year, I have heard a great deal about how our step increase, the 2.5% we see as cost of living, did not cover the health insurance premium increase we experienced. Teachers with fewer years of experience and many of our educational support staff saw their take-home pay decrease. They also saw service cost increase, and in some cases, our coverage decreased. This is very frustrating for these hardworking and dedicated employees. We appreciate your desire to be fiscally responsible. However, I look at our new hires and I wonder how they survive. These young people are saddled with college debt, often in need of more reliable transportation, and have all of the typical household expenses. The rent on my first apartment has doubled since I've lived here, but the starting salary for a teacher has not. We need to ensure young people choosing careers in Frederick County Public Schools that their choice will ensure them a financially secure future. We may never agree as to whether a step is a raise or a cost of living increase, but I am here to let you know that those steps on the salary scale represent something to us: financial stability. We do not have a contract that promises us movement each year, but when we are hired and each year we see those salary scales, we want to see ourselves on that next step. Each year as educators, we hope the Board of Supervisors provides enough funding so the school board has the ability to help us keep up with inflation and cost of living while meeting the educational needs of our students. Many people rely on government funding and thereby citizen taxes for survival. Military personnel, public employees and contractors, all of those who have retired from these positions, and those on Social Security, not to mention those receiving temporary assistance. The only way these individuals see a change is if monies are reallocated or there's an increase in revenue. This year, Frederick County has an increase in revenue in our locality with that effective tax increase. I would have liked to have seen some of those funds invested in the current county and school budgetary needs, and perhaps just a portion saved for the future. The county and student needs of today will not dissipate while we wait to build buildings. However, there are many things we would all like, as we've heard this evening. At this point, I ask that you support the budget as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Lamanna.
My name's John Smith. I'm from out of town. John Lamanna from Stonewall District, representing the school board. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, we have spent months working on our budget and listening to each other as we identified priorities, debated the impact of necessary cuts. Through individual and joint meetings, you know the school board's priorities, its needs, and its proposed expenditures and expected and needed revenue. I have nothing more to add. We have done our talking. All attempts to persuade, to sway, to convince have been played out. So rather, I'd like to speak to the budget process and where we go from here. There is a saying regarding messaging that goes like this: if you trust the messenger, if you trust the messenger's intent, you will believe the content of the message. Trust the intent, and you believe the content. I speak for the board, the school board, when I say we have trusted your intent as an appropriating body, and I believe you have a similar perception of the school board. I say with confidence that each decision we make as a school board can be drilled down to our mission, to ensure all students an excellent education. Whether it is a need for a bus, a need for an elementary school, or a design for a high school, this is indeed our intent. There is no other agenda, no other reason. I've mentioned before that I did become somewhat discouraged by the divisive rhetoric directed at our boards, often noted in the local paper. You know, disagreeing with someone is not a character flaw. However, personal insults may indeed be. As a school board, we are with you as we work together towards what is best for our county. To disagree doesn't mean that we disregard. Mr. Fisher and I represented the Shawnee District for many years. We have fundamental differences on the design needs of a high school, but I trust his intent and would gladly return to his side porch and sip on lemonade once again. My point is simple. It is time to truly work together, not to please or pacify any one constituent base, but to do what is best in the long term for our community. I look forward to the time when our two boards can join together to look strategically to the future, planning for inevitable growth in a systematic, transparent, and efficient way. We have the given authority, the capability, the responsibility, and I hope that we have the will. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dodie Stottlemyre.
Good evening. My name is Dodie Stottlemyre, and I'm from the Shawnee District. I wish I had a lot of prepared remarks, and I don't. Really, what I have is coming from my heart. I understand what hard decisions you guys have putting this budget together, but I'd like for you to take into consideration those folks who may not be able to make it to come and talk to you, or who may not be able to navigate the website, which is a little difficult. It's not exactly user-friendly for those who want to contact you. But I work with an awful lot of folks in the private sector whose salary, trust me, is way less than the $65K that supposedly is the median here in Frederick County. Myself included, you could double that and that wouldn't touch mine. So those of us who are not exactly in that level of income tighten our belts when things are hard or when we don't have the money. And so I implore you guys to think about the fact that the schools certainly are important, but it seems that the schools are taking a huge chunk of the budget here in Frederick County. If you add in, which I wasn't aware of, the $96 million for debt service, along with what they get, you're talking way more than 63% of the budget. And therefore, we're sliding fire and rescue, we're sliding the sheriff's department, and I just kind of ask you to think about maybe some reallocation percentages for funds, but also to think about those folks who are probably not in that income level, and 60% is going to be a struggle for those. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Stephen Baker.
Hello again. My name's Stephen Baker, reside in the Redbud District. And the first thing I wanted to mention was in support of Mrs. Cummings, she spoke to our Lions Club when they first did the drug task force. And sadly, I remember when she spoke, there had been about 13 overdose deaths in our area. And sadly, I either knew of or had friends that knew about 5 or 6 of them. So, you know, it's a problem that certainly needs funding and your assistance. The other comment I would make to you in general about the budget and to you all is that I've lived in 3 jurisdictions in my life, 3 states. Grew up in West Virginia, lived there the first 18, 20 years of my life. Served in the Army for 3 years. After that, lived in Maryland, in Montgomery County, Maryland, very affluent county. and then have lived here for the last 21 years. And as I mentioned, I'm one of the readers of the paper. I think you have about half their subscribers here tonight. It's not the youngest demographic we'll see. But I can tell you, in living in those jurisdictions, my take on what goes on with the local government and their spending, I am not looking at a bunch of free spending liberals sitting in front of me. You all are very responsible with your money. You work with, the school board knows it, they work with you each year. You know, when we had our housing bubble, I can remember looking in the Star where you saw about that many transfers of property each week when they listed them. Well, now we're back to a nice full page, and it's not a repo going on. So I think you all have been responsible. We're a growing county. I know that you're here to serve our public. I know that Dr. John LaManna, not LaManna, works very hard, as does the school board. And they know who you are, and I think they present a reasonable picture to you. And I urge you to support them and the children of our county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's the last person we had sign up, Mr. DeHaven.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mrs. Garton. I'm David Savine, Superintendent of Frederick County Public Schools and resident of the Shawnee District. I appreciate your critical role in planning and strategically working to address funding needs to position our community to thrive. I know you've heard from many of our residents tonight with some varying perspectives. Since I've had numerous opportunities to engage in two-way communication with each of you throughout the budget process, I will be brief with my comments. Numerous independent research-based economic studies have been conducted by a variety of highly respected researchers in the Commonwealth throughout the last several years, all of which have had the same findings. Investing in our public schools is a wise investment for generating increased revenues and for contributing to the community's overall stability, health, and well-being. I respect your challenging role as a funding body, but I believe supporting our public schools, public safety agencies, county services, and parks and recreation facilities is absolutely essential for strengthening our community's position to thrive today and in the future. I agree with Dr. LaManna's comments. The collaborative and joint strategic work of both boards moving forward will allow us to collectively navigate the most complex challenges and build a stronger Frederick County for our next generation. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stein. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Shannon Trout. I'm a resident of Shawnee District. I already spoke with Mr. Fisher on the phone a few weeks ago. I just want to say that I've been a resident here for 4 years now. I used to live in Maryland as well as West Virginia, so I know another gentleman was talking about that. But I fully support any tax increase that will fully fund our Sheriff's Department. I'm concerned that we're not giving the deputies that were requested, as well as EMS, as well as the schools. I am a teacher with Frederick County Public Schools, and I go along with the sentiments that Joy Kirk, the president of the FCEA, expressed just a short while ago. And I'll just add a little bit to that. As a young teacher in the county, I've been here for 6 years. In the last 3 years, I've had 5 of my friends, people that have about 3 to 5 years of teaching experience leave this division to go to Loudoun County Public Schools or Fairfax or another division that's close enough to commute. So they are living in our community. They're highly qualified educators, but they are choosing to commute to a different division because of the benefits and salary packages that are given to those teachers in those divisions. So I just implore you to think about that as we're looking at funding the school budget, because we're losing qualified candidates. I have 2 more that are looking for jobs right now as of a month ago. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about fully or not fully funding the school and going along with the budget that Dr. Savine presented, that we are losing qualified candidates, and that is going to impact our students more than anything else in the budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Anyone at all? Last call. Well, then we thank you for your participation. Your contributions at the hearing are an important part of the decision-making process. And on a personal note, we know what a commitment it is to take time away from your other responsibilities and your families to come and share with us, but it's very helpful and it's very important to the process, and we thank you for that. With that, we'll close the public hearing. That will bring us to board liaison reports. Are there any? Citizen comments on any subject at all? Is there anything anyone would like to share? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Allison Behan, and I'm from the Stonewall District, Chairman and Board of the Supervisors. As you just saw in the fiscal year 18 budget as presented, Frederick County Public Schools are projected to increase enrollment of almost 300 students. Therefore, I'm not sure where some of the previous constituents are getting their numbers of declining or flatline enrollment. Also, as shown in fiscal year 18 budget, you saw we are extremely low in our real estate tax rate compared to our surrounding areas. To that point, if you notice the median income of Frederick County, we are above many of those counties in the area that pay more than us in real estate tax. So obviously, other people can do it, so can we. In regards to the CIP, Supervisor Fisher, I appreciate you mentioning that the Board of Supervisors is working with the school board to come to some agreement, but even still, as far as the public eye can see, no action is being taken. The longer it takes to take action is the longer you're delaying our children a proper education in a non-crowded environment. I beg you to please approve the CIP as presented and stop delaying our children what they deserve. I think and I hope we can all agree that our children in our community are our future. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'd appreciate supervisor comments regarding what I've stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Board of Supervisors comments, are there any?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dunn.
We have a wide and different set of views here. I want to give you the perspective from just my perspective on the data that we have here. I used to be a teacher. I fully understand what it's like not to get a pay raise. When I joined the Board of Supervisors last year, I was told that the county had gone through some very severe tightness on money. I did my homework, and thank you, Mrs. Garten, for this information. And you just need to hear the numbers that occurred to contemplate what's going to come. In 2008, this board had a budget of $131 million. In the following years, it went to 129, 122, 128, 124, 131. If it had stayed at 131 million in 2008, flat, it would not have been, it would have been the same as in 2016. So just in this last year, have we gotten to a point where we have broken even from the deficit that occurred? So those people, because of that, there are a number of people on this board prior to my being here that had to make cuts on capital improvements, including the sheriff's department, the schools, et cetera. In this budget going forward, I've made the comments to try to go and get sheriff cars, for example, on a replacement basis every 7.5 or 8 years. And that costs money, but that's in this budget. I've made comments to the schools on trying to get a replacement situation for every 13 years or 15 years on their school buses. Those school buses cost $150,000 or $100,000 a year. There's a cost to do that. So this board is trying to go back and get onto a normal spending pattern that's trying to address some of the deficit spending or the lack of spending that occurred for a 4 or 5 year time frame. At the same time, going forward, the school board has on their CIP a number of items that have no cost to them. And so just as one supervisor, I'm concerned about what happens in the next 5 years. And we as a community need to go and address that. There's a member on this board who last year said, we are a community. That includes teachers, young people, old people, public sector employees, private sector employees. And we need to work together, and I think we're trying to do that. But I just want to give the teaching community, of which I used to be a part, some thoughts. When you say that your health care has gone up and the salary increase does not cover that, I'm empathetic to that. But I was talking to a person earlier this week whose health care costs had gone from less than $300 a few years ago to about $680, and whose deductible had gone from $1,000 to $6,000. And so those in the private sector are not being reimbursed. So just recognize that from that perspective. We're trying to go and do a budget that none of us here probably all agree on, but we're trying to compromise to make something that most of us can agree on that will address the needs of most of the comments in this room. From the gentleman that said he had a 20% tax increase to the teacher who said people are leaving. We understand the tension. What we do is probably not going to satisfy everyone fully, but we're trying to satisfy a group of taxpayers and public needs. So just recognize that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anyone? Vice Chairman Fisher.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. Thank everyone for your time and participation.